So you want to find your image and save it because we're going to want to import it as an SVG. But if your image is too low resolution or something, you're going to have to go and upscale it. A lot of these upscalers make you spend money to upscale 3 times or something, but you can just go to another website and then keep on going. After upscaling, you can go to a posterizer and do however many colors you want. But if you're doing more than one layer of color on your background, you're going to want to keep in mind that you don't want to just do the outline of this orange, a full rectangle of orange, and then the motel on the front. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. We have they just did the orange as the background, but then they layered on the blue and then put the black outline and then the white. You don't want to just put the orange where it is, because then you're going to have a bunch of like little tiny gaps of canvas or whatever you're painting on behind it. Like you can see in my Neo painting, there's a little like slight gaps in the forehead. I don't know if they updated it or something because I use this exact website for the Neo painting, or maybe it's just something with the image messed it up. I'm going to be doing 2 colors because this is a very big stencil. I wanted to make it one canvas. It was like 10 by 7 inches, but the reason I didn't is because it is very difficult to do anything more than like a 2mm or anything less than a 2mm dot. Like this was originally downscaled 3 times, which meant I was printing literally dots in the air, and you can't really do that with 3D printer. It just falls over immediately. Did not work at all. And also my stilts were very high, so that made it not work too well. But when you're doing such a big piece, it probably won't fit on your build plate, and that's where these like gaps come in. And I put 0.4mm in between them, but when they ended up printing, I think the Bambu Lab P1P, the one that I use, is just so precise because that was literally like the size gap I was seeing when I put them together. So maybe just leave that out if you have a P1P. So I got my SVG here. It's like this because, you know, the low resolution. I don't know why, but there's so many blurry images of this. I don't know if there's an original or if they're just all blurry, but all of them are low resolution. You just have to upscale. Okay, once you got your SVG, go to insert SVG, and then just select the image. You just select the plane you want it to be on. Doesn't really matter, and you can move it and resize it. Okay, then you extrude all the pieces you want and maybe cut down on the border to save time and material. I found that the SVGs can be a little weird. There's 2 pieces, one here and here, that I had to like kind of tweak a little in the sketch to make them be able to extrude. So you might run into that as well. Okay, so for this gap, I just drew like a simple line that would help these 2 pieces align themselves well. And then I did do the offset, but I wouldn't recommend it. Maybe just like a tiny offset so you can separate them. Cut them off here just to be quick, extrude that. But you want to be careful when doing the offset, because if you accidentally like touch this edge or something, it's gonna try to go and like wrap around, connect to all these tiny points, and it's gonna like freeze up your computer probably for a bit. And that's why I kind of pull these lines out past the edge pretty far so I can avoid touching it. The distance between the small loss and the surface are 10mm, and then the medium loft where for the weights is going to be 30mm from the bottom. As you're making this too, you're probably going to want to bind your loft key to, like, I use G just because I just bind it to whatever tool I'm using a lot in a project. Now, this is one of my sketches. I just projected all the parts. So these construction lines kind of can be a guide. You don't have to use them, but I do it so I can do like a halfway point in between my lofts as I sketch for the second layer, because this is a little bit above, because we'd be lofting to here. Okay, now here are the circles for my lofts. You can see I projected the construction lines, although you could probably just use this sketch. And that actually kind of made it a little annoying because I had to select both of these, like halves of the circle. But yeah, for this big piece, it's relatively big piece, I did 4mm, or no, 5mm, 4mm to 5mm, but you could probably just get away with 3. I wouldn't try to do 2. The only time I did 2 was like on this small piece because the gap is so small, and I don't know, I just wanted to have like an easier time spraying it. Really no reason, honestly. Just do minimum 3mm all the time if you can. But on parts like these, I just like cut off a section and then loft this section to it because it's less than 3mm wide, and that's worked pretty well. So once you've done all these like midpoint connecting lofts, then what I'm gonna do is add like another loft on top of it to put a weight on top, because if you're spraying this from the side trying to get under here, you don't want to have gaps because then your paint's going to go under there. And yeah, you can raise these up on pillars. I did that once, but it increases the fail rate a lot and time and filament. When you are printing these for the small parts, I'll usually use glue. Although I've had a low fail rate, so it's just whenever a piece does fail, then I apply a layer of glue. And this specific piece failed multiple times, as you'll see. These are 10mm circles that I'm going to use to tape weights on top of to hold them down. And I don't do a weight here because if this is lofted to these two spots, then it'll press on all three of these points. I don't like this would hold down the edge, but that's not as important as these pieces. Also, you can just put weights on directly onto the part. I mean, unless it's really thin, and this is really thin, but you can just put a weight probably here and that'll be fine. But this could probably be optimized more. Like, I don't think these have to be as high. I just keep them this high to like standardize it, and my gaps are usually never that far. You can print these at like 100% speed on the Bamboo Lab P1P, but for this piece right here that kept on failing, I applied the Bamboo Lab glue, which works pretty well. And when it got to around like this point or something, I would switch it to half speed. Okay, to recap, you're gonna want to have a good thickness depending on how large your stencil is. Try to go for 2 or 3mm lofts. Don't make details less than that unless they're lines, and if they are very thin lines, then do 3mm wide lofts off them. You can make these weight stilts to help with spraying under. And very important, make sure when you're taking one of these prints off the build plate, you wait for it to cool, because since they're so thin, they will definitely bend and warp. So what I do is I kind of take the build plate off and then I wave it to cool it off. Once it's cool, then I just bend, pop it off if you have one of those plates. But if you don't, then you can use a scraper. I was done with the stencil. I taped all the pieces together and trimmed off where it connected, then added a bunch of paper on the outside so my overspray wouldn't catch on the blank canvas. Here I am just painting all the canvases red. Make sure you have a mask that is good for spray painting, and gloves. Just when I was getting set up to start adding the weights and use the stencil, the heat from the sun and the wind actually flipped over the stencil. Then I noticed that a part was completely destroyed, and then I noticed that all the parts were like melted. It was an uneven surface. So don't do that. Put on the weights and taped it to the canvases so I could start painting. This time I'm in my garage so the stencil doesn't melt and the wind doesn't bend it. So tape the sides a little so it looks like the stencil wraps around the canvas. But you could also print those parts too. The final product came out pretty good, but it could have been better. It's just that using multiple canvases made the surface uneven and got rid of some details. Plus I moved the stencil a bit when painting to fix something, but you can just not do that. Anyways, you can ask me questions, I'll probably answer them. Bye. Just a side note, this is another like stencil related thing I made. You can like snap on these pieces onto this cap. If you want to use it, you need a high pressure can, and probably need to ask me for the CAD because I haven't put it up. This is just like a test piece. You can't do the 3D stencil thing because you would have to like move the can relative to the stenciling. You can't do that with this rig, it's all fixed. There's also this blank right here, so you can edit one, make a picture, and also like a hollow one, so you can make a traditional stencil and like tape it on. Also, it works really well.